Look at any object around you. You process its color, shape, and distance, but you do not actually interface with the object itself. You process sensory data generated by your own nervous system. This creates the central crisis of epistemology. How can we logically justify belief in an external world when our access is mediated by internal data? In philosophy, this barrier is known as the veil of perception. The veil of perception is the concept that human beings are separated from physical reality, restricted to a screen of subjective sensory appearances. If all we ever directly observe are internal appearances, skepticism takes hold. Without a rigorous way to pierce that veil, our assumptions about physics, biology, and daily life lack a logical foundation. To solve this, we must separate metaphysics from epistemology. Metaphysics is the study of what reality actually is. Epistemology is the study of the rules governing what we are logically allowed to claim as warranted knowledge. Proving the world exists is a metaphysical problem. The epistemological problem is tighter. We need to isolate the precise functional mechanism that allows a subjective sensory state to grant logical justification. This diagram illustrates a formal logical argument known as the problem of the external world, or PEW. PEW is a structured proof designed by skeptics to demonstrate that perceptual beliefs are unjustified. It begins with premise 1, the indirectness principle. This rule states that nothing is ever directly present to the mind except internal perceptual appearances. That leads to premise 2, the meta-evidential principle. The meta-evidential principle is a requirement that an agent must have a justified reason to believe their sense organs are functioning correctly before trusting the resulting data. Next is premise 3, the no good reason claim. Any attempt to verify the accuracy of your perception inherently relies on using your perception. This traps the observer in a circular feedback loop, meaning we have no independent reason to trust our senses. These three premises logically necessitate the conclusion. Step 4. All perceptual beliefs about the external world are unjustified. The rest of modern philosophy is a targeted intellectual siege on this specific argument. To defeat the skeptical conclusion and secure our right to scientific inquiry, we must dismantle at least one of these load-bearing premises. The earliest attempts to solve this crisis focused on attacking premise 1 by rewriting the structure of reality itself. This diagram maps George Berkeley's concept of idealism. Idealism is a metaphysical theory arguing that ordinary objects are simply mental constructs rather than independent physical entities. By moving the object entirely into the mind, Berkeley removes the veil. A contemporary alternative is direct realism. Direct realism is the view that physical objects exist independently, but our experience is the direct perceptual contact with the object, represented here by an unbreakable tether. There is no internal proxy. The world is a literal part of the experience. Under this view, there is a stark physical difference between a veridical perception, the good case where the object is real and the tether connects, and a hallucination, the bad case where the subject interacts with nothing. But these metaphysical reconfigurations fail the strict epistemic test. Structurally connecting the mind to the world explains the physics of perception, but it does not explain the rules of belief. Even if an experience is an unfiltered relation to reality, the observer still needs to know they are in the good case rather than hallucinating. Because changing reality wasn't enough, focus shifted to the epistemological theater. Classical foundationalists decided to target premise 3, the claim that we have no non-circular reasons to trust our senses. Thinkers like Bertrand Russell argued that we do possess non-circular reasons to trust perception. They relied heavily on abductive inference. Abductive inference is a logical method that starts with an observation and seeks the simplest and most likely explanation for it. This diagram illustrates abduction in practice. The existence of a mind-independent external world serves as the most logical explanation for the dense, highly organized sensory data we receive. The external world is the best hypothesis for why our internal appearances behave the way they do. Abduction provides a rational reason to cross the gap. However, it forces the entire cognitive system to rely on introspective appearance beliefs as the absolute bedrock of all knowledge. It requires us to consciously analyze our own sensory states before we can analyze the world. Relying on introspective appearance beliefs exposes classical foundationalism to a critical vulnerability known as the Sellersian dilemma. This diagram maps the cognitive stack required for justification. The dilemma asserts that for a sensory experience to justify a belief, it must possess conceptual, propositional content. It must exist in the logical space of reasons. This creates the first horn of the dilemma. If an experience lacks propositional content, it is just raw, non-cognitive data. It cannot logically justify a proposition any more than a rock can justify a mathematical theorem. The second horn is equally destructive. If the experience does possess propositional content, it operates exactly like a belief. That means it requires its own prior justification, which triggers an infinite regress. An infinite regress is a logical flaw where each step in an argument requires an underlying proof, making a final conclusion impossible to reach. The Sellersian dilemma demonstrates that raw experiences and logical beliefs are incompatible data types. This effectively breaks the classical foundationalists' bridge to the external world. To avoid the dilemma, modern epistemologists abandon the need for internal evidence entirely, removing premise 2, the meta-evidential principle, from the logical stack. The first modern replacement architecture is Siemens internalism, often referred to as modest foundationalism. Modest foundationalism is the view that perceptual beliefs about the external world are directly justified by perceptual experiences, without needing secondary beliefs to support them. This graphic shows the mechanics of phenomenal directness. The mere fact that it intrinsically seems to you that something is true grants prima facie justification. Prima facie justification is a term for a belief that is logically acceptable on its face, unless or until it is contradicted by new evidence. The second replacement is etiological reliabilism. Etiological reliabilism is a form of epistemic externalism. Epistemic externalism is the view that a belief can be justified by factors outside of the agent's conscious awareness, such as the biological reliability of their brain. Notice how the right side of the diagram operates. Under reliabilism, justification requires zero internal evidence. It relies exclusively on the objective statistical reliability of the cognitive factory producing the belief. If the process is reliable, the output is warranted. Consider the clinical phenomenon of blindsight. Patients with damage to their visual cortex possess zero conscious visual experience, yet they form accurate perceptual judgments, flawlessly navigating physical obstacles. Because their unconscious cognitive process is statistically reliable, their spatial beliefs are logically justified. By eliminating the strict requirement for conscious meta-evidence, modern epistemology secures justification. The cost, however, is turning knowledge into an unconscious mechanical process, rather than a reasoned deduction. The ultimate synthesis requires merging the physical and logical. This is the domain of epistemological disjunctivism. Epistemological disjunctivism is a theory asserting that veridical perception provides a different and superior kind of epistemic justification than hallucination. This theory outright rejects the skeptic's foundational assumption. It denies that the internal evidence we possess in a veridical good case is identical to the evidence we possess in a hallucinated bad case. This illustrates the good case. The physical link transfers a distinct class of factive evidence directly into the belief node, guaranteeing truth. In the bad case, a hallucination, the tether to the external world shatters. The mind is left isolated, possessing a structurally inferior warrant. Epistemological disjunctivism treats the veil of perception as a false premise rather than an obstacle to be overcome. If true perception and hallucination are different classes of evidence, then the skeptic's demand for a universal verification check is logically unnecessary. By categorizing true perception as a superior form of warrant, this framework provides a structural defense for our belief in the external world.